Welcome back, casual gardeners. Today I looked out my window at the beautiful fresh snow on the ground and I thought, yep, it's time to start seeds! There are 5 big problems that are common when you're starting seeds, and I thought I'd discuss them here. Problem number 1 is damping off. Damping off is actually a fungal infection of our seedlings. The fungal hyphae penetrate into that seedling and they'll clog up the circulatory tissues of the plant, which stops nutrients from flowing from the roots up into the leaves and kills the plant. There are several things we can do to reduce the likelihood of damping off. None of them are 100% effective. So one thing I never do, but you could do, and I should do, is you can start your seedlings with fresh potting mix in sterile containers and use sterile tools, because that way you're reducing the likelihood of introducing fungal spores of that type into your seedlings in the first place. As soon as your seedlings have about 50% germination, make sure you are removing any humidity domes and that you have really good air movement past your seedlings, because it is a fungal disease. Excess moisture is going to trigger it, and controlling excess moisture is going to prevent it. Make sure that your seedlings are the correct temperature for the type of seedling. So cool weather seedlings should not be on heat mats, while tomatoes and peppers, for example, should definitely be on heat mats. That ensures that they have the optimal conditions for growing. And then indirectly, if you make sure that they have adequate light and nutrients and the right moisture levels in the soil, all of this is going to maximize growth of your plants, and a plant that is actively growing and hasn't been slowed down by adverse conditions is going to be able to fend off the fungus that is responsible for damping off that much more effectively. Issue number 2 is leggy seedlings. Unless you are trying to start your own little plant version of the Rockettes, you don't want it to get too leggy. Of course, this is stretching to reach the light, but it can also be controlled a little bit with air movement. Air movement is like so cool. So what air movement with an oscillating fan is going to do is create variable air movement around your plants and force them to kind of grow a little thicker to counteract those forces as they stretch toward the light. Another thing, of course, you want to do is provide adequate light for your seedlings. Your lights might look really bright inside your house, but they're nothing compared to sunlight. One way that you can improve your light exposure without investing a bunch in extra lights is, of course, closing that distance between the lights and the plants. If your light bulbs are hot, keep that in mind. But as you have the distance between your light and the plant, you are multiplying the amount of light that's hitting the plant by 4, so it's really effective. If you notice that your soil is drying out too quickly, or the tips of your leaves are turning brown and getting kind of crispy, or the leaves are just shading pink when that's kind of a surprise because they don't normally do that, those are all signs that you might actually be providing too much light. Thumbs up, back it off. Also make sure that you're paying close attention to your photo period. You don't want it too long or too short for the light plants that you're growing. Most plants do need a nighttime rest period, so make sure that lights are off for at least 8 hours a night. But other plants will actually have bolting triggered by long day length. Lettuce is a great example of that. So make sure that you are aware of the light duration needs of the plants that you're starting. Problem number 3 I want to discuss is poor germination. Number 1 cause of poor germination was probably old seeds. Make sure that you are keeping track of how old your seeds are. Some seeds are good longer than others. Lettuce is good for 5 or 6 years. Corn seed, not so much. After a couple of years, your corn seed is just a waste of time. So if you make sure you have dates on your seed packets and you're moving out the old seed packets when you need to, that will help a lot with poor germination. Another thing that causes poor germination is incorrect soil temperature. Again, keep your cool plants cool and your hot plants hot. Use a heat mat underneath your tomatoes and peppers. You don't want to allow your soil surface to dry out, so that's when the humidity domes come in, but you also don't want to overwater because that's going to cause fungal issues and rot as your poor little seedlings germinate, and that could kill them off as well. And again, make sure you remove any humidity domes. Once you have about 50% germination. Okay, problem number 4. Maybe your leaves are discolored. We already talked about leaves changing color earlier with too much light, but leaf discoloration could be caused by nutrient deficiency as well. But not all nutrient deficiency is caused by deficient nutrients. If you over or underwater your seedlings, that can stress the roots. Stressed roots will not pull up those nutrients from the soil to feed your plants, and you'll see that nutrient deficiency even if you have adequate levels of fertilizer in there. So before you fertilize your seedlings, make sure that your moisture is right, your soil is draining appropriately and has good air pockets in it so that those roots can breathe. And then, if you've checked all that, you can apply a liquid fertilizer at 1/4 strength. That's 1/4 of the manufacturer recommendation, and that should help with your nutrient problems. Problem number 5 is mold and algae on the soil surface. Now, 9 times out of 10, totally made up statistic by the way, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to be harmless, that layer of fluffy, fuzzy stuff on top of your soil. But if it gets thick enough and you're using traditional trays and not soil blocks, then that could stop adequate air movement penetrating through the surface of your soil, and that could starve your seedlings' roots because the roots got to breathe. So in that case, you're going to want to scrape off some of that gooey layer. Also, a thick layer of algae or fungus on top of your soil could cause excess water retention and cause moisture issues. Probably the same mechanism. Just like I said before, once you got about half of your seeds germinated, remove the humidity dome. Both fungus and algae needs moist conditions to thrive. Air movement is going to be another big helper with this issue. If you provide adequate air movement, the soil surface is going to dry out, fungus and algae will dry out too. If you really want to make sure you never see any fungus or algae on top of your soil, what you can do is put a thin layer of perlite or vermiculite or even sand on top of your soil, and that will just provide a breathable layer that blocks the light and kind of chokes out the algae. I don't know that it'll help with fungus. It'll help with the fungus you can see. And then finally, more indirectly, if you provide the right levels of light and nutrients to your plants, they're going to grow faster. It'll block the light from reaching the algae and making algae grow. But mostly not a problem. So those are the top 5 things that could be problems as you start seeds this season. Let me know in the comments if there are any techniques that I left out that you think are essential, or, whatever you want to talk about. If you just want to talk to strangers on the internet, the comments are a great place for that as well. And what could possibly go wrong? Make sure you've liked this video. It's been really fun seeing you on a Wednesday or a Thursday, whichever day I decide to publish this. And thank you for joining me here in my garden. Hope you have a wonderful time in your own.